The medals hit the floor. Point one by one. Bronze star. Clinking against wood. Purple heart. Rolling toward the edge of the stage. Silver star. Landing face down. The man stands at center stage. His uniform is pressed. His posture is rigid. His hands are shaking. He is removing every medal from his chest and dropping them at Oprah Winfrey's feet. The studio is silent. 400 people do not breathe. Oprah does not move. She stands 3 feet away from this decorated war hero who is systematically stripping himself of every honor he has ever received. And then he reaches for the last one, the Medal of Honor, the highest military decoration in the United States. He holds it in his palm. He stares at it. His jaw tightens. And he says 5 words that make Oprah's knees buckle. I do not deserve this. He drops IT. He hits the stage with a sound that echoes through the silent room like a gunshot. And then Sergeant First Class Marcus Williams, the most decorated living soldier of his generation, falls to his knees. Not in salute. Not in ceremony. In collapse. And Oprah Winfrey does something she has never done in 40 years of television. She gets down on the floor with him. She sits beside him. She takes his hand, and she waits because some moments cannot be rushed. Some truth cannot be hurried. Some pain can only come out in its own time. How did we get here? Rewind 104 minutes. The morning had started with anticipation. Today's episode was supposed to be a celebration, a tribute to American heroes. 3 veterans were scheduled to appear. Each had served with distinction. Each had stories of courage and sacrifice. Each had been selected to represent the best of those who serve. Sergeant First Class Marcus Williams was the centerpiece, but he had served 4 tours in Afghanistan. He had saved 17 lives during a single engagement that lasted 9 hours. He had carried wounded soldiers through enemy fire. He had shielded his unit from a grenade blast with his own body. He had received every major combat decoration the military could offer. He was 43 years old. He had retired 2 years ago. He lived quietly in a small town in Virginia. He rarely gave interviews. He never talked about his service. But Oprah's team had convinced him that we want to honor you, they had said. We want America to see what real heroism looks like. He had agreed reluctantly. His wife had encouraged him. Tea will be good for you, she had said. To be recognized, to be thanked as he had come, that he had put on his dress uniform for the first time in 2 years. He had pinned his medals to his chest. He had walked into Harpo Studios at 8:30 a.m. And he had sat in a green room for 2 hours, staring at his reflection in the mirror. Something was wrong. The production assistant who checked on him noticed that his hands were trembling. She asked if he needed water. He said no. She asked if he was nervous. He said no. She asked if there was anything she could do. He looked at her for a long moment. Can you undo 20 years? He asked. She did not know what to say. He turned back to the mirror. Never mind, he said. I will be fine. But he was not fine. He had not been fine for a very long time. Subscribe and leave a comment, because the most powerful part of this story is still ahead. At 10:45 a.m., Oprah walked on a stage. The applause was deafening. The audience was packed with veterans and military families. They had been specially invited. They had traveled from across the country. They wore pins and patches and photographs of loved ones who had served. This was their day. This was supposed to be a celebration. Oprah delivered her opening remarks with her usual warmth and energy. She spoke about service. She spoke about sacrifice. She spoke about the debt America owes to those who protect it. And then she introduced the first guest, Staff Sergeant Elena Rodriguez, 28 years old. She had lost her right leg to an IED in Iraq. She had learned to walk again. She had completed 3 marathons on her prosthetic. She had started a nonprofit that helped wounded veterans find employment. Her story was inspiring. The audience cheered. Oprah asked thoughtful questions. Elena gave moving answers. The segment went exactly as planned. The second guest was introduced at 11:12 a.m. Master Sergeant Jerome Patterson, 56 years old. He had served 30 years in the Army. He had been deployed to every major conflict since Panama. He had never been wounded. He had never lost a soldier under his command. He had retired last year with a flawless record. His story was remarkable. The audience applauded. Oprah praised his dedication. Jerome spoke about the honor of service. Everything was proceeding smoothly, and then it was time for the third guest. Sergeant First Class Marcus Williams. The lights dimmed, a video package played on the screens behind the stage. IT showed footage from Afghanistan. Dusty mountains, military vehicles, soldiers in combat gear. A narrator described the engagement that had made Marcus a legend. On September 14th, 2009, Sergeant Williams and his unit were ambushed by enemy forces in the Karangal Valley. Outnumbered 5-1, they fought for 9 hours. During that time, Sergeant Williams personally saved 17 lives. He carried wounded soldiers to safety while under constant fire. He shielded his team from a grenade blast with his own body. He sustained injuries to his back, his shoulder, and his left leg. He refused medical evacuation until every member of his unit was secure. The video showed photographs of Marcus in uniform. Young, strong, unbroken. For his actions that day, the narrator continued, Sergeant Williams was awarded the Medal of Honor, the Bronze Star, the Purple Heart, and the Silver Star. He is one of the most decorated soldiers of his generation. The video ended. The lights came up, the audience rose to their feet, and Marcus Williams walked onto the stage. His medals gleamed under the studio lights. His posture was perfect. His face was expressionless. Oprah crossed the stage to greet him. She extended her hand, but he took it. His grip was firm, but his hand was cold. Sergeant Williams, Oprah said, "It is an honor to have you here." He nodded. They sat down in the interview chairs. The audience settled. The applause faded, and Oprah began with the question she always asked decorated veterans. When you think back to that day, she said, "What do you remember most?" Marcus was silent for a long moment. The audience waited. Oprah waited. The cameras kept rolling. And then Marcus spoke. "I remember the screaming," he said. His voice was flat, controlled. "I remember the smell of blood and smoke. I remember the weight of Private Torres on my back as I carried him to cover. I remember the sound the grenade made before it exploded." He paused. "But that is not what keeps me up at night." Oprah leaned forward. "What keeps you up at night?" Marcus looked at her. His eyes were hollow. "The men I did not save," he said. Behind the scenes, Oprah made a decision that defied every producer's expectation. She did not move on. She did not redirect. She did not try to steer the conversation back to heroism and triumph. She leaned in. "Tell me about them," she said. Marcus's jaw tightened. The audience shifted uncomfortably. The producers in the control room exchanged worried glances. This was not in the script. This was not the celebration they had planned, but Oprah knew something they did not. She knew that this man had not come here to be celebrated. He had come here to confess. "There were 23 of us in that valley," Marcus said. His voice was barely above a whisper now. "When the ambush started, we took immediate casualties. 3 men died in the first 30 seconds. Private Collins, Private Baker, Corporal Hernandez. He listed the names as if he were reading from a memorial wall. "I was the ranking NCO," he continued. "I was supposed to protect them. I was supposed to get them home." He looked down at his hands. .17 survived because of what I did. That is what the citation says. That is what the video said. That is what everyone wants to talk about. He looked up at Oprah. "But 6 died," he said. 6 men who trusted me. 6 men who follow my orders. 6 men who are not here today because I was not good enough." Oprah felt her throat tighten. "Marcus," she said gently, "you saved 17 lives. You did everything humanly possible." Marcus shook his head. "Oh," he said. "I did not." He stood up. The audience gasped. Oprah remained seated, watching him, and Marcus Williams began to remove his medals. This is the moment no one in the studio and no one watching at home ever saw coming. The Bronze Star was first. He unpinned it from his chest and held it up for the audience to see. "They gave me this," he said, "because I called in an airstrike that saved my unit. But what they do not tell you is that the airstrike also killed 2 Afghan civilians, a father and his teenage son. They were hiding in a building I thought was empty. I found their bodies afterward. The father was still holding his son. He dropped the medal. It clattered against the stage floor. The audience sat in stunned silence. The Purple Heart was next. "They gave me this," he said, "because I was wounded. But I was wounded because I made a mistake. I moved too slow. I hesitated when I should have acted. And because of that hesitation, a grenade landed at my feet instead of 20 feet away. Private Torres threw himself on me to shield me. He absorbed most of the blast. His voice cracked that he saved my life. And 3 months later, he died from his injuries. Complications from the shrapnel they could not remove. He was 22 years old. He had a daughter he never got to meet, that he dropped the Purple Heart that IT rolled across the stage. The Silver Star was next. They gave me this, he said, for hand-to-hand combat. They called it heroism. They said I killed 8 enemy combatants at close range. What they do not say is what that does to a person. What it does to look into another human being's eyes while you end their life. They were someone's sons too. They were fighting for what they believed in, just like we were. And I killed them with my hands. That he dropped the Silver Star, IT landed face down. And then he reached for the Medal of Honor. The room held its breath. This, he said, is supposed to represent the highest form of valor. The ultimate recognition of courage above and beyond the call of duty. That he held it in his palm. But every time I look at it, he said, I see the faces of the men who died. I see Private Collins taking a round to the chest because I positioned him on the wrong flank. I see Corporal Hernandez bleeding out because I could not reach him in time. I see Private Torres in that hospital bed, tubes everywhere, apologizing to me for not being stronger. His voice broke completely. That I do not deserve this, he said. That he dropped it. The Medal of Honor hit the stage with a sound that silenced every heart in the room. And Marcus Williams fell to his knees. Not in salute. Not in ceremony. That I in surrendered. I in grief. I in the complete and total collapse of a man who had been carrying the weight of 6 souls for 15 years. Share and subscribe. Make sure this story is never forgotten. Oprah stood from her chair. She walked to where Marcus knelt. She lowered herself to the floor. She sat beside him. She took his hand, and she did not speak. For 3 full minutes, she did not say a word. She just sat with him. That I in his pain. That I in his guilt. I in his grief. The cameras kept rolling. The audience wept silently. The other veterans on stage, Elena and Jerome, rose from their seats and walked toward Marcus. They sat on the floor too. Elena took his other hand. Jerome placed a hand on his shoulder, and something extraordinary happened. One by one. Veterans in the audience stood up. They walked toward the stage. They climbed the steps. They sat on the floor. Within 5 minutes, there were 47 veterans sitting on that stage. Some had medals of their own. Some had visible wounds. Some had invisible ones. All of them understood. And finally, Oprah spoke. Marcus, she said, look around you. He raised his head. He saw the circle of soldiers surrounding him. These men and women, Oprah said, they know what you know. They have seen what you have seen. They carry what you carry. And not one of them thinks you are undeserving. She paused. The guilt you feel, she said, that is not a sign of failure. That is a sign of love. You love those men so much that you have punished yourself for 15 years for not being able to save all of them. She squeezed his hand. But Marcus, she said, you cannot save everyone. No one can. Not even the bravest, strongest, most decorated soldier in the world. You saved 17 lives. That is not something to apologize for. That is something to honor. She pointed to the medals on the floor. Those medals, she said, they're not a lie. They're not something you stole. They're a recognition of what you did. Not what you did not do. What you did. She turned to the veterans surrounding them. Am I right? She asked. The answer was unanimous. 47 voices. 1 word. Hua. The military affirmation echoed through the studio, and Marcus Williams broke. Not in collapse this time. That I in release. He wept. 15 years of suppressed grief poured out of him in waves. He wept for Private Collins and Private Baker and Corporal Hernandez. He wept for the Afghan father and his teenage son. He wept for Private Torres, who had saved his life and lost his own. That he wept for every man he had killed with his hands. That he wept for the soldier he used to be and the broken man he had become. And the veterans held him. They held him while he wept. They held him while he shook. They held him while he finally let go of the weight he had been carrying alone. The episode was supposed to end at noon. IT did not end until 2:15 p.m. For over 2 hours, Oprah transformed the show into something unprecedented. A group healing session. Veterans spoke about their own guilt, their own ghosts, their own medals that felt more like burdens than honors. Military spouses spoke about watching their loved ones disappear into themselves after deployment. Mental health professionals in the audience offered resources. Hotline numbers were displayed on screen. And through it all, the medals remained on the floor, and no one picked them up. Not until the very end. When it was finally time to conclude, Oprah did something remarkable. She asked Marcus to stand. She asked the 47 veterans to form a line. And one by one, she asked each veteran to pick up a medal and return it to Marcus. Elena Rodriguez picked up the Bronze Star. This medal, she said, is for courage under fire. I know courage. I lost my leg and I got back up. You lost brothers, and you came here today to tell the truth. That is courage. She pinned it to his chest. Jerome Patterson picked up the Purple Heart. This medal, he said, is for sacrifice. You sacrificed your body, your peace, and your silence to protect others. That sacrifice matters. He pinned it to his chest. That a young sergeant picked up the Silver Star. This medal, he said, is for gallantry. Not perfection. Gallantry. You showed up when it mattered. That is all any of us can do. He pinned it to his chest. And finally, Oprah herself picked up the Medal of Honor. She stood before Marcus. This medal, she said, is not for the men who died. It is for the men who lived because of you. 17 families got to hug their sons and husbands and fathers because you were there. 17 Thanksgivings. 17 Christmases. 17 lifetimes of moments that would not exist without you. She looked into his eyes. You deserve this, she said. Not because you are perfect, but because you gave everything you had. And that is all any human being can do. She pinned the Medal of Honor to his chest, and 400 people rose to their feet. Not in applause, in salute. Every veteran in the room raised their hand to their brow. Every civilian placed their hand over their heart. And Marcus Williams stood at center stage, medals restored, surrounded by brothers and sisters who understood his pain, finally allowing himself to be honored. Not for perfection, for service. For sacrifice, for being human in the most inhuman circumstances. The episode aired 3 weeks later. IT became the most watched episode in the history of the Oprah Winfrey Show. IT was shown in VA hospitals across the country. IT was used in military training programs. IT was credited with saving lives. Veterans who watched it called hotlines they had been avoiding. Veterans who watched it reached out to therapists they had been refusing. Veterans who watched it told their families the truth for the first time. Because Marcus Williams had shown them it was possible, that you could carry guilt and still be worthy, that you could grieve and still move forward, that you could drop your medals on the floor and pick them back up again. Marcus Williams started a foundation. He called it the SIX, in honor of the 6 men who died that day in the Coringal Valley. The foundation provides mental health support for veterans suffering from survivors' guilt. IT has helped over 12,000 soldiers and their families. The logo is simple 0.6 star surrounding a single hand reaching upward, because the dead do not want us to suffer for them. They want us to live for them. Marcus speaks at the Foundation's events whenever he can. He always tells the same story. The story of the day he dropped his medals on Oprah's stage. The story of the day he finally let go. The story of the day he learned that being a hero does not mean being unbreakable. IT means being broken and choosing to heal anyway. Oprah visits the foundation once a year. She sits in the audience like everyone else. She listens to the speakers. She cries during the testimonials. And she always finds Marcus afterward. They do not say much. They do not need to. Some bonds are forged in moments too profound for words. They just sit together, two people who shared something that cannot be explained. Only experienced. The medals that Marcus dropped that day were later put on display. Not in a museum. In the headquarters of the Six Foundation. Beneath them is a plaque with words that Oprah wrote herself. These medals were dropped in despair and picked up in love. They're a reminder that our wounds do not disqualify us from honor. They qualify us for it. To all who serve, to all who suffer, to all who survive and wonder why, you are worthy. You have always been worthy, and you are not alone. There is one final detail that most people do not know. When Marcus left the studio that day, he was carrying something he had not brought with him, a handkerchief. Oprah had handed it to him when he first started weeping. It was simple, white, embroidered with small flowers. He had used it to dry his tears. He had meant to return it. But when the taping ended, he realized he was still holding it. He tried to give it back. Oprah shook her head. "Keep it," she said, "for the next time you need to cry." He laughed. It was the first time he had laughed in years. "I do not cry," he said. "You do now," she replied. "And that is how I know you're going to be okay." He kept the handkerchief. He carries it with him everywhere, tucked in the pocket of whatever jacket he is wearing. A reminder that strength and tears are not opposites. That vulnerability is not weakness. That sometimes the bravest thing a soldier can do is drop his armor and let someone see the wounds underneath. Subscribe to this channel so you never miss another story like this. Because there are more veterans who need to hear this message. More soldiers who are carrying weights they were never meant to carry alone. More medals lying on the floor waiting to be picked back up. If you know a veteran who is struggling, share this story with them. If you're a veteran who is struggling, know this. You are not your worst day. You are not your heaviest guilt. You are not the sum of the people you could not save. You are the reason 17 families got to hug their loved one. Once again, you are the reason someone is alive today who would not be without you. You are worthy of the medals on your chest, even when you cannot feel it, especially when you cannot feel it. Marcus Williams dropped his medals on Oprah's stage, and 47 veterans helped him pick them back up. That is what service really means. Not doing it alone, doing it together, always together, never alone.